So let me start by asking, so are you better at chess or better at lifting?
Oh, I'm much better at chess.
Okay.
Not even close. No, so in chess, I'm, like in the 2200s right now, USCF, which corresponds to about like the top 1% of tournament chess players in the US. And in lifting, I'm like a decent interested amateur. I would guess that like if you had to give me a chess rating in lifting, it would be somewhere around like 16 or 1700, like, like far from a beginner and a pretty good amateur, but also like, if you go to some tournament in a big city, you're by no means going to be one of the best players. So that's about where I would rate that. And I started lifting when I was, hmm, I started doing it for real when I was around 30. And so that kind of progress is maybe similar to what you might expect in chess, like take things very seriously for a number of years. And, most players are going to end up somewhere in the class level after that.
Okay, now, yeah, I am a 1600 in chess, so you are as good at lifting as I am at chess. But I am looking at your Twitter right now, and you are squatting three plates with pretty good form, might I say, and you are deadlifting what looks like three plus plates, maybe like 10 shy of four plates, so that's like 395, 385. So that's not bad, sir. I put you over 1600.
Yeah, my best squat is 435. I hit that around a year ago. My best deadlift was 475. But yeah, probably percentage wise, it might come out to somewhere in that area because I think that I had a coach actually. This guy Michael Wolf coached me in lifting for a couple of years, and his best squat was around 585, and we were talking about how that probably made him in terms of like competitive powerlifting similar to like an NM where like he was not like world class elite but he was like very very good, probably 99th percentile of competitors. So yeah, I mean it's similar to chess, like the competitive world as opposed to just doing it as like a hobby. Like some people are very very strong.
Yeah, some people just have that like natural farmer strength. That is not me at all. Uh,
Yes. No, I had quite the opposite. I was a skinny insect when I began lifting. I was always like super skinny as a kid, and had a fast metabolism and everything. And yeah, strength definitely did not come easily to me. I gained probably from like peak to trough like 90 pounds over a period of many years. Um, and yeah, but it was that fact, that I had to kind of like work very hard and train correctly and eat correctly in order to make the gains that I could. That gave me more insight into like, teaching people and lifting and, what kinds of things are good as a beginner. Whereas in chess, I flew through that beginner play phase pretty quickly and then had to start working harder, somewhere around like some intermediate level.
And Todd, would you say, in chess, it's easier to gain 100 points when you're a 1,000, let's say, versus a 2,000? Is that the same in lifting, where if you want to add 25 pounds to your bench and you're benching 185, is that easier than if you're already benching 315?
Yes, absolutely. It's actually a cool parallel. There's a famous book by the same author who wrote the book Starting Strength called Practical Programming for Strength Training. And the cover of that book is a graph that shoots up quickly and then like tails off into a slowly increasing, plateau as the x-axis of time training goes on. And what's funny about that graph is that it looks exactly like everybody's chess rating graph, basically. It's like a
Yeah.
quick increase in the beginning and then, diminishing returns over time, where you really have to train harder and more specifically to squeeze out little increases as time goes on. But it's just funny that there was that parallel between chess graphs and, strength graphs.
do you feel like chess and strength training are similar in that you have a big advantage when you start younger? Like, obviously, with strength training, you can't start when you're like four or anything. But, like, if you started when you're 15, 16, do you think you have a higher ceiling?
Yes, but I feel that strength compared to other physical things is a lot more forgiving of age, and also like more forgiving of lack of talent. I do think that like young age and variation in talent are just kind of big noticeable things in the chess world. Whereas in strength, if you kind of like do a set of things like eat, sleep, train correctly consistently over time, you're much more likely to make steady progress. In general, strength, one thing that's nice about it compared to to chess is that it's kind of like less variables and less variance. Like your strength is what it is, and it's more directly manipulable than chess, where like there's some level of like magic and improvement happens in like weird starts and fits that are hard to understand.
Yeah, and also with chess, you have to like go to a tournament, overcome your nerves, and play well and have a good performance to improve your rating. With lifting, you can just do it in your basement, and like, yeah,
Yeah,
you can kind of feel when you're good when you have it, or like, okay, I do not have an extra 10 pounds today, so yeah, it kind of makes sense.
yeah.
I I have been lifting on and off for probably like 7 or 8 years now, but I haven't super stuck with it. So I kind of go through phases like I first started lifting in CrossFit. Okay, don't shame me, but it did really help. It did really help to learn the form, if nothing else, because I had never done any lifting before. And then I trained like squat and deadlift quite a bit. And I don't know, I'm not like super strong with any of these. Like my max deadlift I think was 295 a little bit ago, and my max squat I don't remember what it was. I think I hit like 285, and then I kind of quit because I hurt my back on the rep, unfortunately. So I am just trying to like kind of maintain that. But my weakest by far is bench press, and I have been trying very hard to actually increase that, but I can only bench like 165 like on a really strong day, and the bar's barely moving. So what advice do you have to like build the bench press in particular? Do you just need to do a lot of bench press, or do you need to work a bunch of the accessory movements too?
Well, I think that as a starting point, every single person, if they, regardless of whether you've been lifting for a number of years, and I did this when I had been lifting, also like you starting in CrossFit and, just like doing various experimental things in like gyms. Um, I did this program when I was around 30, which is when I started getting into lifting for real,
Mm-hmm.
and was getting coached. And it's called a novice linear progression. So this is like the foundation, and a novice linear progression is a 3 to 6 month program. It's extremely simple. You just do the same lifts every single session. So session A will be like squat, bench, deadlift. Session B will be squat, overhead press, and deadlift. Sometimes the power clean is swapped in there as well. But 3 times a week, you just alternate between workout A, workout B, workout A, workout B forever, starting at a very comfortable moderate weights that you can certainly do 3 sets of 5 at with a couple of reps like easily left in reserve. And then every single workout, you increase those weights by a tiny amount. So if the number is below 100, you might use 2.5 pound increases every session if possible, otherwise 5 pound increases. And you just do that indefinitely until at the end it starts to fail. And then there's little things that we can do to squeeze that progress out where we can switch to a single heavy set of 5 and 2 lower sets, or sometimes you might switch to threes at the end and squeeze out those little last drops of progress. But if you haven't done that specific program for a dedicated period of 3 to 6 months, that's where you should start. And during that 3 to 6 month linear progression, it's important to kind of focus all of your resources on uh, just strength for a while, just those lifts for a while. So kind of reducing other activity, like if you're like a big jogger or, you do a lot of like, WODs or CrossFit or something like that, just kind of relaxing that stuff just for this 3 to 6 month period, and then eating and sleeping a lot. And depending on your age, like the eating is maybe one of the most important things, and where a lot of people, uh, you know, um, get tripped up or maybe limit their progress simply by not eating enough calories. But you want to give yourself like maximum resources in terms of both food and sleep during this period so that you can keep squeezing out that progress.
Okay, that makes sense because I do like to run, and so I know that it's not going to help your gains or strength or anything, but I don't think it's going to hurt all that much. So I tried to. I mean, I have a young kid, so I'm not doing a ton of exercise right now, but starting to get back into it. My plan was just kind of like do, maybe 2, 3 lifts a week and maybe 3 or 4 runs a week overall.
Yeah, I mean, some amount of cardio is reasonable, and a lot of people do that during the linear progression. But it's just one of those things where, like, just for this 3 to 6 month period, you want to reduce your other resources from the other activities and
Yeah.
just focus on strength. Because one thing about increasing those weights, 2.5 pounds or 5 pounds, like if you start multiplying those numbers, like it gets much heavier very quickly. And so at about 2 months in, the program is, it becomes very challenging, physically and mentally. Like, you're doing like 3 sets of 5 that are quite heavy on Monday. And then you're doing the same thing again, slightly heavier on Wednesday and Friday. And it gets to a point at the very end where you're close to failure, where it's like, you're kind of psyching yourself up to go do those three heavy sets for the day. And at around that point, that's where you'll be happy that, you ate a lot of food and slept and didn't divert much energy. But the thing to understand about the linear progression is that it's just a temporary phase where like you're building a baseline of strength that you'll use forever later. And then after you run out the linear progression and you can't progress anymore, that's when number one, your training starts to get more complicated in terms of lifting. And then number two, you switch back to focusing on whatever balance of exercise you might want to do, whether that's just training for aesthetics or bodybuilding or working on a sport or just some combination of strength and cardio.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so so Matt and I trained for a marathon or sorry, a half marathon about a year and a half ago. We ran it, and we had this really great book. It was basically I can't remember what it's called. Do you remember what it was called, Matt?
80/20, something like that.
Yeah, maybe 80/20 running. That's where I was leading. So we have this 80/20 of running where like 80% of your miles should be nice, easy miles, and then 20% is like you're running pretty hard. And we were thinking like, how do we apply this to chess? It's probably like 80% playing, 20% studying. Is there an 80/20 that you can think of for lifting?
Oh, that's a good question. Um,
It almost seemed like you maybe gave us the answer. It was like 80% of your training is just like kind of working up to like your potential, and then that 20% is like really pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, or possibly taking it from another angle. Maybe the thing that gives you most of your bang for your buck, at least in my experience, is big compound lifts. So,
Okay.
squat, bench, deadlift, and overhead press as like the foundation of general strength. And then afterwards, when it's impossible to just bang away at those lifts forever, you start adding in, accessories and, dumbbell stuff and, cable machine and curls and all of this kind of thing. But those are just like little add-ons that kind of help you progress um, along in the main lifts. They're not like your big drivers, but the most productive strength exercises are the ones that you can do with number one, a large amount of weights, because strength is the ability to produce force, and using more weight taxes that more. Ones that you can do over a long range of motion, and yeah, so like that describes the compound lifts well, and then the other lifts kind of supplement everything.
Yeah, you could almost have an 80/20 right there, like 80% big compound heavy lifts, 20% accessory too.
Yeah, and that's kind of been my approach to lifting. Where when I started, it was like exclusively compounds, and now I do various programs that are kind of structured around like driving up my compound lifts, but they include other things, other like little dumbbell exercises and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, awesome. So Matt, take us through your lifting routine. I know you recently switched it up and you're not doing a ton of the compound stuff anymore. So what sort of lifting have you been doing?
Well, I haven't done it for probably like a month now. So I'm sort of like Jesse Todd, where I have a barbell and a rack in my basement, but I kind of go in spurts. Like sometimes I'm lifting a lot, sometimes I'm not. And when I was younger, I feel like I had much better recovery. Whereas now, like Jesse said, we were running a lot. And when I was lifting plus running, I never felt like I was recovered or really making progress. So I switched to this like just super simple 2 day a week routine. And it came from this guy, Renaissance periodization.
Oh yeah, yeah, Mike Israetel.
Yeah. And he had a video, it was like lifting for busy adults or something. And he's like,
Yeah,
here's two 30-minute routines that you can do like, 20 rep max. And then at the end, you do some sort of like set to failure, just, 60 minutes a week. So that's what I was trying to do, but I haven't done it probably for like 3 weeks now.
yeah. That two times a week actually connects with me because I read a starting strength article about like if you were busy just lifting twice a week, and at the beginning, maybe like 3 or 4 months into COVID, I had been very lazy prior to COVID starting, and then COVID also started, and so I hadn't worked out in quite a while. I was kind of detrained and out of shape, and that's how I started getting back into things. Was I would just do like a simple session of the main lifts twice a week. And it was actually amazing. I thought that it was going to be not so productive, but it was amazing what steady progress I made just doing that for like 3 or 4 months. And then kind of I built my lifting habit back up. And then after that, I had like just like several years of being like very compliant and going to the gym a lot. But yeah, one time a week I think is like definitely not enough. And 7 days is like enough time to kind of like get detrained and lose some of your progress. But 2 times a week, especially like if you're busy, you have kids, whatever, is surprisingly effective. So I can definitely endorse that.
So I did pull up the program. So Todd, I want to hear what you think of this. Okay, so here's day one, and these are supersets. So each two is a superset. Close grip bench with underhand pull downs, barbell upright rows with dumbbell shoulder press, dumbbell curl with overhead easy tricep extension, easy bar, and then stiff legged or single leg deadlifts with lunges for legs. So it's kind of like trying to do opposite muscle groups, I think.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a strength and like bodybuilding kind of approach, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And Israel is like a big bodybuilding guy, so that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a reasonable program. And the main thing is on a 2 day a week program, the most important thing is like defending those 2 days. Because if you miss one day, like then your momentum really starts to go downhill. But the plus side of this is that 2 days a week is like not an impossible amount to hit. But you just want to make sure that you plan like in your schedule, like, okay, specifically when are those 2 days going to be? Let's make sure that I kind of protect that time so that nothing gets in the way of it. And then, yeah, I think that if you can stick with that schedule for 3 to 4 months, you'll be happy with the results.
Okay, so I think we both got some good tips here, Jesse. I need to schedule 2 days a week and make sure I don't miss them. And it sounds like, Jesse, you need to start a 3 to 6 month bulk and don't do any running and get your bench just crush 185 and go to 205.
No, I was going to say that I will say that one thing with the bulking, so you mentioned, like recovery and like, not being 21 anymore and everything. So like, the eating like a maniac part of that, novice linear progression is one thing that does vary a little bit with age. So I ate aggressively when I was doing it. I was probably eating like 3,500 or 4,000 calories a day. And I was 30, which was pushing it a little bit, but it was fun to eat all of that food. So I did it. And yeah, like I gained a lot of strength and a lot of weight, but some of it was fat, which is not a huge problem. Like it's much easier to lose fat than it is to acquire muscle. But yeah, the like quality and quantity of the food is one thing to be mindful of. Where especially if you're like 40, for example, and you're just like eating 4,000 calories a day and a lot of like McDonald's and Shake Shack like I was doing, that's probably not the best approach at that age. So that's one little thing to adjust.
Yeah.
That's interesting. When I was at my strongest, Todd, I was 25 years old. And I've
Yeah.
always been like hard gainer, cross country runner. And I really wanted to gain weight. And my friend and I were doing squats, deadlift, bench press, overhead press. Those were like our core lifts. And I was doing GOMAD, gallon of whole
Okay.
milk a day. Like I would pack Nalgene bottles to work of whole milk. And after a couple of months, I craved it. Like I would need to just
Really?
constantly have whole milk in
Craving
front
the
of me.
milk.
And then we were
That's
eating like
awesome.
Wendy's hamburgers and stuff, just like you were saying. And if I
It's
did that
fun.
now, yeah, it was fun. But if I did that now, I don't think I could make it even like 2 weeks.
Yeah, yeah. GoMad became kind of a meme. It was something that was recommended, I think, like partially in jest, but it's primarily for like a skinny 18-year-old kid who's highly active and is just going through puberty and just like incinerates food. For the rest of us, yeah, it is quite aggressive. I'm curious, how was your like? Did you react well to all that milk? Did you have digestion issues or anything like that, or you were just kind of fine?
No digestion issues.
That's
I
good.
gained probably 20 pounds, and
Yeah, yeah.
I think my best lift was a deadlift of 315, which is not
Nice.
super impressive, but for me, it was really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the reason I stopped doing it though is because I was trying to just run around the track, like jog around the track, and my legs just felt like they couldn't move. Yeah, it's just like my body did not want to hold that amount of weight. It's like, okay, I
Yeah,
got to
yeah,
get healthy again.
yeah. It is a lot. I think a gallon of milk is what, it's like 2,400 or 3,200 calories, something like
I
that.
think it
Maybe
was 30.
2,400,
Yeah, I think it was
3,200.
3,200 a
Yeah,
day
yeah.
and just milk. And then you were supposed to eat your normal diet on top of that. Like you don't substitute food. You eat your
Yes.
full day and then do that.
Yeah.
My family of six goes through a gallon of milk in a week, and you're doing it every single day. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. As Mark Ripito says, milk makes baby mammals grow, and you, sir, are a baby mammal. That's one of his quotes.
That's funny.
That's okay. Well, it certainly worked for our 6 month old. He is drinking milk and growing like crazy. Okay,
Exactly. Yeah.
okay. You threw in a tiny tip that I feel like we kind of glossed over, but this is one that a ton of people in the fitness space say, well, like when you're first starting, is do the full body workout because as soon as you miss a day, you're not completely off balance, and you can just like get right back into it, and it's only like you missed one day versus like, oh, I missed chest, now I have to like go and then I have to do chest, and then like throws off my whole week next week. So that's a huge tip for strength training, I think, is to do full body as often as you can.
Yeah, especially during the those years where like you're building your baseline. It definitely helps. Also, just because the exercises, because they're big compounds, like they inherently they're efficient, right? Like you're using heavy weights, you're using lots of muscle groups just by the nature of the exercise. Like a squat uses so many muscles at once compared to isolation. So yeah, they're just like big efficient lifts that are good for getting bigger and stronger.
Yep. And in honor of having you on the podcast today, I lifted this morning for the first time in a few weeks. I've been working through a few
Yeah.
injuries or whatever, and it's amazing how quickly you lose it. Because like
Yes.
I was squatting pretty regularly, and I just never got sore. Like you just kind of get used to it. And this morning, like already am like super sore just from like super easy. Like I didn't even squat that much, and
Yeah.
it's like so sad how quickly you lose it. But
Yeah.
uh,
Well, that's one of those things that is a function of how long you've been training,
yep.
and how advanced you are. It's one of those things like, okay, if you start doing a novice linear progression, for example, and you're starting as a total beginner and you work out like really hard and perfectly for, let's say, a month, and then you stop for a month, then it's like, okay, most of your progress is like gone. It's like quite significant. But the longer that you've been training, the more that you can get away with being spotty or not working out or getting sick for a period of months. And that's similar to chess, right? Like, I've been playing chess now for an insanely long amount of time, a scary amount of time. I think it's been 25 years almost. And so, okay, like if I didn't like think about chess for a year, which is somewhat unlikely that that would even happen at this point. But if I didn't, it's like most of my strength is going to still be there. So it's just kind of a function of like how long you've been doing it, and how advanced you are in your curve, I think.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, we were looking at you. So back to chess. So this is a chess podcast after all, but we were looking at your like USEF, and it sounds like you have a similar progression arc as Matt. So it sounded like you were pretty good early, and then you didn't make master and kind of until adulthood. So we were kind
Yes.
of wondering if you could just like kind of walk through your chess progression. Like when did you get interested? How did you realize you were kind of good? That type of thing.
Yeah, so I learned most of the rules of chess actually when I was very young. Maybe I was like 5 or 6. I learned it from my father. But then it was like, we kind of lived in like a small town, and it's like there weren't chess clubs or anything like that at my school. So I kind of forgot about it for many years. But then one time in middle school, there were some kids at the lunch table when I was around 13 who were playing chess at the lunch table, and then it was like love at first sight kind of thing. Like I like immediately got hooked, and I was playing on Yahoo Chess every single day, and I started buying books and quickly going to tournaments. And yeah, I probably ascended very quickly to about 1800 strength. I think I hit 1800 by the time I was 18, like roughly when I was going into college. And most likely due to lack of tournaments, like I had kind of been at that level a little earlier than that. But yeah, then definitely it got harder for me to improve. Not so much because I was distracted with college or anything like that, but that's just kind of when the difficulty of improving started to set in. So it took me a couple more years to get 2000, and then hitting 2200 from 2000 was extremely difficult for me. That took me 6 years. So I got that when I turned around 25. But yeah, that was an extremely hard plateau. Um, uh, for me to break. And now since then, I've been bouncing around the 2200s USCF. And at this point, like any future gains, would be amazing, but are certainly difficult to acquire.
So, what do you feel like your ceiling is, Todd, if you just dedicated all of your time to chess improvement? I'm curious, like, how high do you think you could push that rating to?
Yeah, that's always a tricky question. I usually don't think about it like that because I feel like when you get focused on like, I can hit X or I want to hit X, like this is distracting and actually maybe makes you play worse. But okay, so right now I'm sitting at 2267. I had some good tournament recently, and I'm actually in a pleasant surprise, like extremely close to my USCF peak, which I hit like 10 years ago. So that's been quite nice. So I would say that certainly just mathematically, like if I have a couple of good tournaments, 2300 is on the table, and that would be like fantastic. Just going from 2200 to 2300 for me would be absolutely thrilling. Maybe it would be possible to budge a little further past that, and that would be fantastic. But that's more of a maybe. Anything beyond 2300. But at this point, at least just statistically, if I get a couple of good coin flips, 2300 is a possibility now, which is cool.
And if you hit 2300, which you are close to, I mean, I feel like FM is not that far away. You got to get out of the tournaments where there's the real underrated players in the US, but I mean, 2350 USCF, you could maybe approach FM already.
Yeah, it is tough in the US. That is one thing that has changed certainly in the last 5 to 10 years in the US. In the US, is that FIDE has become difficult, and I have some theories on why that is. I think that it's mostly due to this chaos in the rating system due to many players with like a really low number of games, mostly young players, but some adults with wacky FIDE ratings certainly exist in the US as well. So that's been pretty tough. I had a period where like my USCF stayed very stable in the 2200s, but my FIDE tanked from like 2130 to like around 2030, and now I gained a bunch of FIDE back in my last tournaments. But yeah, in the US, FIDE is very challenging currently, especially below that like 2300 USCF level. That's quite tough. So yeah, if I ever had an aspiration to do that, maybe I'd have to move to Serbia or something.
Or just play like invitational, round robin type events.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, that's a tough one. I had said that maybe for this reason that FIDE's rating system it would be better if like all of the FIDE ratings below maybe 2000 were deleted. That's not a very popular suggestion because nobody wants their FIDE rating um, deleted, but I do feel that's where a lot of the kind of entropy in the rating system comes from. But possibly another policy that might help that I've been meaning to look into a little bit is if FIDE had a more aggressive policy for making ratings provisional if they were not based on enough recent games. And in that scenario, maybe like a provisional rating, the provisional player could gain or lose points from the game, but the opponent would not. And that might help, mitigate some of the wackiness.
I think you're right because even if you think back to like when we were around high school, college age, really people only considered OTB chess the gold standard. Not a lot of people talked about their ICC
Yeah,
rating or their fixed rating back in the day. Whereas now kids are getting super strong online and they might not play more than a dozen tournaments in a year. So it's like you
yeah,
got this Glicko rating online with 1,000 games this year or a
yes,
thousand games this month if you're crazy. Yet you have, 50 over the board games in a year. It's just how is it
yeah.
going to keep up?
Yeah, it's really interesting how that switched. And that a similar thing happened to me where like around COVID, like I never cared that much about online blitz, but then I started playing it all the time. And suddenly I cared a lot about that rating because like you said, it's just based on so many games. And the other interesting thing is that when I prepare for players in tournaments, like I don't even bother to look for them in an over the board database. It's
Yeah.
just like a waste of time, right? I'm going to find like 7 games that are not in my opening from, the past 5 years compared to if I find their chess.com or Lichess username, then I have this like erupting volcano of information. Like I can just like predict what's going to happen in the game for the first 9 moves. So that's been a really interesting change as well.
Yeah, this is something that I've run into in the Chicago Open. I've been trying to play that tournament the last few years, and they'll email out the pairings, I don't know, 45 minutes before the round starts, and I
Yes.
know I have a public profile on chess.com, and it
Yes.
just messes with my head because I can't find most of my opponents. They're smarter
Yeah,
than that. They're hiding their profiles. They're only playing Lee chess, whatever it is.
yeah.
And I know they can look at thousands of my games.
Yeah, that's definitely not the best. I ran into this problem as well. I have an unfortunately named chess.com account. Its name's Todd Bryant, so it's very easy to find. And over COVID, I put like 10,000 plus blitz games on it, just religiously playing my same repertoire. And I definitely ran into this as well. Luckily, in that case, like even the like very sketchy lines that I played that are vulnerable to people preparing, I knew them very well from the massive amount of blitz games that I had played. So I would normally be okay and be able to trick people even if they sprung a surprise on me. But certainly since then, I have moved to playing heavily on an anonymous account with like some different openings. Because yeah, like you say, it is a big liability just to have everything exposed and so easily Googleable.
Yeah.
Yeah, so okay, so at Chess Goals we have a bunch of opening courses, and we try to keep our openings pretty short and sweet because a lot of the people who follow Chess Goals are like in kind of like me, like they're in the 1,000 to 15, 16 up to like maybe 2,000-ish range, and we found that like if you spend a ton of time on your openings at this rating range, like there's just better times to spend, better
Yes,
places to spend your time.
yes,
And so we really focus on play a lot of games, get your openings kind of set and out of the way. You, like me, get a little obsessed with openings, and it's really fun to study. So,
yes.
take me through your opening progression and how you go about learning openings.
Yeah, so I worked in this a lot. I used to work for Chessable before I worked for chess.com.
Oh
And
yeah,
so
I
that
didn't know
was where
that.
I really got into like Chessable courses and studying openings and looking at all of this stuff. So yeah, ever since 2020, I went from like not knowing any openings at all. Like I would occasionally try to study them. I would like read some book and go through the lines, and then I would just sit at the board and something would happen on move five, and I'm just like staring at the board like I know I've seen this position, but I like recall nothing. And so, yeah, step number one was actually using Chessable. Chessable had one huge improvement over physical books, which is why they were so disruptive kind of in that area, which is that they organized everything nicely for you on the website and they made you play it with your hand instead of passively reading it. And doing it with your hand is so much better for memory that just that alone made a huge difference in recall. But in more recent years, I have found that the number of lines in like large chessable courses, it can be quite overwhelming and hard to manage, especially when you don't know like what is relevant to my games and what isn't. So I've been working recently in learning my new openings with a new method, which is my secret Todd method for learning openings, where basically I maintain one single PGN file. I have one for white and one for black. And every time that I play a game, I check the opening against the Chessable course. I have like Python scripts to automate all of this, but this is something you can 100% do just manually. So I'm going to describe it as if you were doing that. So you check the game against the Chessable course, and somebody at some point is going to leave the opening, whether it's your opponent or you forgot a move that you were supposed to play. And when you do, you mark, you enter that line up to and including the point where it left the opening in your PGN file. If you left the opening and forgot something, I put the move I was supposed to play at the end of the line, and I mark it with a blunder symbol just to make it stand out in red as something that like I need to look at. And if my opponent played something weird that wasn't covered in the course, I mark it with question mark exclam where it's also in a separate color, but a less visible one because maybe that's not as important. And then specifically those blunders, um, if I reach that same move and I see that I've forgotten to do it last time, I put a little comment saying like two times in a row or three times in a row. And then naturally over time, the PGN file reinforces like these are the moves that you've chronically forgotten over and over and get a lot. And so I will browse it occasionally, and that'll point me in the direction of what to go review. Or I'll make a little mental note, like when I reach this position on move seven, like this time I'm going to actually remember to play the correct line. And it's just like an organic way of organizing all of this information where it's active, it's relevant to your own games, and the things that you're actually forgetting are kind of clearly marked so you can go review them instead of just being lost in a maze of thousands of variations. And so this has helped me a lot in learning my new repertoire. I've learned, all openings from the white and black side totally from scratch. And it has definitely been the fastest that I've gone through that because previously I would just bang my head against it, trying to review Chessable and play a lot of Blitz games, but I never really integrated the two before I kind of came up with this idea.
So do you have a Chessable file on the side that you're following exactly and then putting that into the PGN, or are you sort of
Yes.
adding? Okay, you're not adding to the PGN as you go. Like you have a different file with the repertoire.
Yeah, so in order to check the opening, you can use Chessable, and you can either like go directly to the chapter, or Chessable has like a slash explorer where you can like play the moves on the board and check it against the course. So you can use either one of those. But yeah, that's how you check the game, and then you just make one little update to the PGN file every time you play a Blitz game, or at the end of your Blitz session for that day.
Oh, I really like that method. Okay, so how many lines are you up to in your PGN file for white and black? Have you counted or have you looked in ChessBase?
I haven't counted, but it's large. Like it spams, the PGN, just like everything, the text altogether will like, fill up most of the screen on my computer. So yeah, it is instructive how large it gets. But the full PGN of, a Chessable course that has, thousands of lines or, a combination of multiple courses that make a white repertoire is considerably bigger than what you actually get in your games. Like it does show you that um, the breadth of things that you actually face, even in a couple thousand blitz games, is not nearly as large as an entire book or an entire course.
Yeah, I really like that method. And do you toss anything out? So if they play something so obscure it doesn't feel relevant, do you toss it out or will you still put it in there?
No, I keep it in there just for completeness.
Okay.
But because it's in like a yellow color instead of red, like it doesn't really catch my eye. So, we can just kind of ignore it. There are other little annoying things to deal with as well. For example, transpositions, maybe big or small pain, depending on how transpositiony your particular repertoire is. So if something can come from like four different move orders, I try to insert it just under one move order so I don't have like, split up trees floating around all over the place. Um, but yeah, and one other thing that I also do is I maintain, at least in like important positions, what my performance rating is in those various positions. And so that can kind of give me a clue that, either maybe I forget too much in a particular position, or simply that I don't understand like how to play very well and maybe need to review some full games in that particular line. And it's also just like more fun data that is enjoyable for me to stare at.
Well, Matt loves data, so you're speaking
Yeah.
his language.
I know. I love this method, Todd. And I like that in terms of the percentage of the time you spend on your openings. It sounds like it's a pretty small percentage if you're just going in and updating the file. Like what percent of your total chess time is on openings, would you say?
Oh, probably a lot. But here is the thing with openings is that I've changed my philosophy towards openings so dramatically. I used to be very anti. I had like the typical like memorizing openings is like stupid and brainless and a waste of time. Doesn't make you good at chess. And now I study openings a lot, both using Chessable and doing this method. And I think that actually it does make you good at chess. I'm very confident in this now because before I studied all these openings, I was like a purely tactical player. It was like my relationship to chess was to do like lots and lots of puzzles. I liked Chess Tempo back in the day. It's a really good, still is a great website. So I did lots of that, but I would often reach like the early middle game and just like I have no idea what to do. And I'm just like calculating random variations that, make no sense and don't happen in the game and wasting a lot of time. And what I found from studying lots and lots and lots of opening lines is that it's still very hard to remember everything and there's lots of concrete things you forget, but what you start absorbing is a little positional ideas of like what is white supposed to do in these types of positions, like where do the pieces normally go, like all of this stuff gets absorbed into your subconscious. And now I feel that my strengths and weaknesses have reversed from this, maybe where like my intuition, especially in like the early middle game, has become quite strong. My tactics I need to go back and work on again because they've been sloppy in some recent games for sure. But yeah, I spend a lot of time on openings. It's half and half because I do think that they're good now and are broadly applicable to like general chess skills, but also just because openings for me have now become like my favorite area of chess, and it's just something that I enjoy. And so it's like kind of split between I think it's useful, but also it's just the area of chess that I like now.
Yeah, that
Okay,
makes
that
sense. The number one tip we always give to people, people ask us like, "What's your number one chess tip?" It's always to keep it fun and keep it interesting. Otherwise, you're
Yeah.
gonna give it up. And so I would much rather have you be at like 50% of your potential for 10 years than going all out for like 6 months and then crapping out. Like you're never gonna get there. But I am like you when I was first learning chess. Like I had no reason at all to be studying these openings, but it was just so fun. I remember I was super early Chessable adopter, and John Bartholomew, if you're listening, by the way, come on the podcast, John. He had his D4 Scandinavian, and
Yeah. There's the
I remember
OG chessable
hounding.
course.
Yeah, yeah, I remember hounding that repertoire so hard. There's a Chessable badge where if you play 1,000 moves without an error, you get the badge, and I got that on his Scandi course,
Nice.
and I
Nice.
have
That was hard
since
to get.
dropped. And that is hard to get, and I have since dropped the Scandi, sadly, but it still brings me back. Like I feel like it's still just in me, like all those moves, all those variations.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's super fun, and you're right because when I went through the Scandi, it kind of got like a little stale for me. And then we have our Carocon repertoire, which I use all the time now, and there's a whole lot of carryover in like they do have
Yes.
similar pawn structures, but just like you can actually like push this pawn in this way, like you just pick up on these little patterns that you think are opening specific, and you're just wasting your time by learning it in this opening, but it really has a much broader application to all of chess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had like so many games recently where some variation of that has come up. Like I had this one game um, at the Alta tournament. I was playing a high rated player, a 2350 player, and he played some line in the French. And on like move five, he does this little move that has quite a lot of theory behind it, but it's uncommon. And this line I particularly like never remember anything in. So I'm like, oh no. But I remembered, just a couple of little things for how to start the game. And, we just played normally and reached some middle game position. But somewhere around move 11 or 12, like this memory came back to me, not from that specific exact position. The exact position we had was like not in the book that I studied. But I just remembered in a really similar position, there was some game that he analyzed where like, white sacrificed a piece and got like a raging attack. And I noticed that this like applied very well to the position that I had, and so I focused my efforts on sacrificing a piece and attacking him. And it turned out that this was all correct, and it led to some like really nice attacking win. But it just goes to show that like I was specifically trying to like memorize stuff when I studied those particular lines. I couldn't remember them during the game, but the ideas in the similar position like stuck in my subconscious and like immediately directed me to the right path in that game. So I'm very team memorizing openings now.
Yeah, that reminds me of a famous line we have in our Carol course actually in the Tartakower.
I was
And
thinking that same thing,
yes,
Jesse.
yes. So we have a few different examples where you basically get your whole setup, your normal setup with your knight on like F8 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they play the move, what is it, H3 to kick your bishop, and you don't retreat the bishop, you sack, and you're down, a piece, but there's like one move to keep white in the game, and they never find it. They have to play like Queen D1 to guard the diagonal, and no one ever
Hmm.
finds that. And there's there's so many positions where that applies, even if you're not in the exact opening. I play that sacrifice every single time, even if it's not any good, because it's so fun.
Yeah, yeah, it is fun.
Yeah. So are your openings pretty set, or do you kind of play everything?
Well, I am working toward playing everything. Like one of my ambitions in chess, like specific rating is harder to acquire, but one thing I can definitely control is like learning all of the major openings. So that's kind of my like 5 year plan in chess. I want to have some experience with, all the major responses to E4, be able to play E4, D4, English, this kind of thing, and a variety of different black openings as well. So I'm working through that. For the longest time, I was like, I played a repertoire based on Negi's recommendations with E4, and I played the Sicilian Dragon and the King's Indian. And now I'm branching out into different things. I don't think anybody's been prepared for me based on this podcast, so I can say the new openings that I'm learning. I've already played some of them over the board by now, but I'm learning D4 with the Trompowsky and D4, D5, C4 main lines. I'm learning that from Kamal Plikta's course. I'm a big fan of his stuff. And I'm also using a Kamal Plikta course, a couple of them for black. I'm playing the French now, which has been interesting and very different. from the Sicilian. There was a big learning curve there because just like the nature of play, it's like very different. Pawn structure is very different, and so often you're like, grabbing an extra pawn or the better structure and like fending off some attack for 20 moves. And against d4, I'm playing the English defense, which is a combination of like early of e6 and early b6 against d4 c4, and that leads to some strange and fun positions as well. But yeah, it's like basically kind of every 6 months to a year. I want to keep mixing it up, get some experience in everything, learn a lot of different pawn structures, and that's kind of what I'm working on now.
I have a general chess improvement question for the viewers, Todd. So let's say you're a 1600 rated player with maybe an hour a day to study chess. How would you design a plan for them to improve as much as possible?
Yeah. So, first of all, a lot of the people listening to this podcast are going to be adults, and adults need to hear this particular piece of advice more than kids, which is to play a lot, like prioritize playing. Like playing comes first. And adults, especially, I found like certain types of like successful adults who like have achieved things maybe in school or in their jobs have this attitude that they're just going to like inhale like 12 chess books in like isolation and then like go to some tournament and like drop their knowledge, like a bomb. And this plan is something that I've never seen work in practice. It leads to, either compliance problems, or even if you do it faithfully, like going to a tournament is not the same as studying from books. So playing very regularly absolutely comes first. That's like the base of the pyramid. And if you want to improve over the board chess, you should start playing over the board chess like today, is my general attitude. Okay, so beyond that, I think that especially at 1600, solving puzzles is helpful. Whether you use chess.com, lead chess, some book, chess tempo, doesn't matter. Just regularly solving puzzles and working on calculation is important. And probably at that level, something similar to the method that I described, or some light version of it, where you try to learn one more move at a time with every game that you play, whether it's like blitz or rapid games, is a useful way to absorb ideas and opening knowledge, rather than just going headfirst into some big thick book or large chessable course.
Yeah, I think you need to write the novice linear progression for approving
Yeah,
adults in chess.
for
Yes.
openings.
Yeah.
Novice linear
Well,
progression for openings.
Yeah.
it actually really bothers me that in lifting, there is this novice linear progression, and it's so unbelievably simple and so reliable and replicable, right? It's like you can go on the internet and find millions of people who've either done the starting strength novice linear progression or something extremely similar, like the other popular programs, Strong Lifts 5x5, and these types of programs are basically the same thing with tiny little tweaks. And just over and over and over and over and over again, it works on beginners and makes them stronger. I really don't know what the equivalent to that is in chess for like novices. Probably the closest thing is the steps method that I can think of. But the steps method is a little less, simple and clear at the very least than, you know, uh, linear progression in the barbell lifts. But yeah, this has always bothered me that like if somebody is like, I'm new to lifting, like what's one thing I should do? I have like a couple sentences to tell them. In chess, I kind of don't, other than, like do a combination of these things and some percentages and, hope for the best and probably, the results are variable. So yeah, that's always annoyed me for sure.
It's almost like you have to play someone who's 5 points rated higher every session, and then if you lose, then you got to somehow like deload.
Yeah. Well, that's, I mean, another difference between strength and chess, which is why like lifting has been such a nice like counterpart to chess in my life, is that chess is almost like poker in a way where it's really a high variance activity. And especially like the result of one game, or even the result of a single tournament is like, you're like randomly rolling dice essentially. And a variety of things can reasonably happen. Whereas in strength, like, we were talking about earlier in the podcast, like any given day, like if you have, some really bad day or you have a great night of sleep and you're feeling great, your strength is still like there. It's like we're talking about a difference of like plus or minus 5 pounds, like maybe
Yeah.
on any given day. So it's been this like reliable, like steady, like no randomness and emotional swings activity that has balanced chess nicely for me.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you think of this analogy then? Your lifting form has to be really tight to give yourself the best chance to keep improving, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That
in
could be
general. Yeah.
that could be the equivalent to kind of like reduce the variance. Like you're not going to have shaky arms doing the bench press, things like that.
Yeah.
Back moving all over the place. Could that be the equivalent of having all of your openings down to 30 moves deep? Where it's like, okay, I can go so deep into the openings that I know I'm going to win the game as long as that,
Maybe maybe it's some some high level that becomes more useful, but it's like even for me, like if I really know my openings to a great degree, there's still like huge scope for random things to happen later in the game. Either they play something weird, because inevitably they always can, and then I'm on my own, or I play the opening beautifully and then I blunder like a baby 5 moves later. It's like still there's just so many wild cards that can happen in a chess game. So you really never escape that volatility, I think, no matter how hard you try.
that's true.
Yeah, this actually reminds me of a random excerpt from the Arnold Schwarzenegger book. So he did a bunch of work with the Special Olympics, and he found that having people with like pretty strong disabilities be able to do these lifts where they know they can actually do it most of the time, it's like so good for their mental health versus like if they're playing basketball, like you're
Yes.
gonna miss a ton of the time, or if you're playing
Yes.
golf, like it's hard to hit the ball, but being able to deadlift like 300 pounds and you can like replicate that over and over and over, it's really good for both obviously physical but like their mental health too. So yes, I love that consistency that lifting gives as well.
Yeah.
So if you guys have been longtime followers of the podcast, you'll know that Todd is the second powerlifting chess player we've had on the podcast, but he is the first powerlifting chess player on the podcast that is taking students for coaching. So if you're interested, you can hit him up. That is at the Strong Chess on
Yes.
Twitter. And if you want free coaching, you can probably DM him and he will give you a boatload of info because I have done that and I am greatly appreciative. So thank you
Yeah,
for
yeah.
your dedication and service. So how many lifting students are you looking to, or how many do you have? How many are you looking to take on?
I've started doing it recently. I've worked with three like longer term people over the past year or two, and I'm kind of like developing my skills and looking to do it a little more. Yeah, I've had one guy in his 20s and two moms with kids, so I have a little bit of a spread in my demographics that I've worked with. But yeah, no, it's something that I enjoy doing. I think that I'm quite frankly awful at teaching people how to like move the pieces and teach the rules of chess and that kind of thing because it was something that I never thought about. Whereas in strength, like I had to think very hard and learn how to do lifts in a very deliberate manner because it was something that did not come easily to me. I do not have like high body awareness by any means, so I had to learn very deliberately. But that translated into being able to explain things well to people and catch little deviations in other people's forms. So it's something that I've been working on and enjoy.
Yeah, that's funny because I didn't pick up chess until I was an adult. So I don't think I even moved the pieces ever until I was 25, so like 10 years now. But now I am always thinking like, okay, when I was first getting started, like so much of this stuff made absolutely no sense to me. So I think that really helps balance when Matt and I do our courses. Like obviously he's a very strong player. I'm kind of like in the middle. I just like ask the dumb question that like probably a lot of people are thinking, but these like you guys, you've these are so ingrained that you don't even like think about like why this pawn move was a horrible weakness or all this stuff. So maybe I should make a course for absolute beginners. It's kind of tempting, actually.
Yeah, no, it's a good market to get into. I still don't think there are that many chess players and like content creators who really hit that demographic. I think there's been some nice things. I think Peter Giannatos's book was quite nice, but I
Yeah.
do still think that that's an underdeveloped niche where people are frequently confused and it's not clear what they should be doing or how to explain things. So I do think that that's a good area to get into.
Yeah, I think Levi Rosman's book was pretty catered to pretty, like, quite new players too, right? I haven't actually read it.
Yeah, his book I haven't read either. It seems very popular, but I mean, okay, of course he's like a huge YouTube star. I don't know how good the book is or isn't, but I've been curious about that.
Yeah, I saw also you retweet his video of putting up 185 on the bench. I'm like, really, Levy can outbench me? Like, like kudos to Levy. I like to see him taking his health seriously too, though. He's posted a lot of like squatting, lifting. Like, he's a pretty strong guy, actually.
Yeah, he's definitely been progressing and he's been posting the lifting stuff more and more. He seems to have gotten quite into, I guess, both lifting and boxing
Yeah,
a little bit.
and
So he's doing
and
that stuff.
UFC.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
Levy, if you're listening, you got to come on the podcast. Okay, well, I wanted to go through a couple puzzles from your Twitter, but is there anything else you wanted to ask, Matt, before we do that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, let's go through a couple of these puzzles that you posted, Todd, and I solved this first one after a little bit. So, okay, so let's take a look at position number one. So you played bishop c1. A very interesting move there, retreating the bishop. Okay, we don't need to say more, but okay, Matt, so what's the move here to win a piece?
Oh, I knew this was coming.
I got to put Matt on the spot.
Yeah, this was sad that
Uh,
I missed this because this is like the oldest trick in the book in this opening. Yeah.
is it bishop e5?
I think you got to take the knight,
Oh,
right?
take the knight. That's it, huh? Take the knight.
Yeah. We got two pieces hanging, but we can jettison one. Yeah, there's like a million traps in the Trumpowski that are related to this bishop takes b8 thing. But it's one of those things that you often overlook because usually bishop takes b8 is like, a beginner mistake. And so you tend to kind of ignore it more than you otherwise would. But yeah, here you can jettison the piece, and there's another one. I was looking at the pawn on g5, so bishop c1 has a similar idea of stepping out of the way and taking something later, but this is much better.
Yep.
And bishop c1's a common move in some other lines as well, right? Like you retreat the
Yes.
bishop and yeah.
Yeah, it's like there's actually some almost identical position. This is why I blitzed it out so quickly, because there's some almost identical position where they play some early g5 lunge and you just retreat to c1. This is without the pawn on c5. And that line's quite good for white as well. But that was one case where like my muscle memory of something that I had memorized steered me in the wrong direction, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, is that with the pawn back on c7 and the d pawn maybe on d5? One
Yes.
of those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. To be fair, man, I think bishop e5 is probably okay because you get that tempo and then you just take the knight after. Okay,
Knight f6
this.
though might block it. I think it's bishop e5 is probably a blunder.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, knight. Yeah, you're right. That's right. Okay, so in this one, I looked at for a while, but I could not get it. So it's a
This one's hard.
crazy psycho move. Okay, so it is white to move here. Our knight is under attack. We have some pressure down the d file, obviously. My first instinct, because you said it's a crazy move, just like snatch this pawn and somehow you get the piece back. Or maybe like pushing c5, maybe. And then I don't know. The first thing that came to my head was taking the pawn. What are you seeing, Matt?
It is
Maybe this is
yeah.
out of our pay grade too.
It's almost a mating net. I don't know. It's again the kings can run to the c file, I guess. Hmm. My intuition said bishop f6, but I have no idea why. Because black could take the knight. Oh, but then we have rook takes their bishop with check. King e6. No, I don't know.
What's
Doesn't
the
look
move,
that good.
Todd?
So this one is very tricky. So your first instinct is what I played in the game. Knight takes f7 check, getting
Okay.
rid of my hanging knight. And so then I'm intending bishop takes f7 and bishop e3. And he can't hold on to that bishop with his king because if I take it, there's a rook f1 skewer at the end. But after knight takes f7, bishop takes f7, I go bishop e3 check. He just runs his king to c6. And then the whole thing is kind of a nothing, unfortunately, because I'm not winning enough material and his king is suddenly very safe. So this didn't work at all. The correct solution in this position is the amazing move, bishop e5 check. Um,
Oh,
Hanging your bishop again, but the idea is that next we're going to take on check with on d5, and then we're going to be able to pick up the bishop, and he has no good way to
Oh.
hold on to everything. So we're going to win a piece. There's a couple of little details that make this work. For example, bishop e5 check, king takes. We take on d5. They go king f6, tagging our knight. At the end, we pin them with rook f1, and we pick up the bishop. And there's one little detail at the end of that for anyone who's still following along, where if they take on c4, you go b3 first to displace the rook, and then pick up the pinned bishop with g3.
I followed most of it.
Yeah, yeah. This was a nasty one. That bishop e5 is like very invisible, and there's a lot of details to make it work.
Okay. Okay, one last one. Okay, here's Levy putting up 185. Very solid lift. Okay, let's do this one. I couldn't figure out this one either. I feel like it's something with knight h6 check, but our queen is hanging. I want to just play checkmate, but the queen defends. Like this check is always kind of in the cards, but I mean, I can't see it. So painful moment when I realized what I missed here a split second after blitzing out some random retreat.
Yeah, I was playing this
Uh,
game outside of a gas station in my car. I still remember.
Degen. Uh, Matt, what's coming to mind?
I'm thinking knight h6 check, king to the corner, and then
Yeah.
queen takes d8.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's good.
Oh, sure, sure, sure.
And
Okay.
then you
Yeah.
got the big fork at the end.
Wow.
Nice. Very nice. Okay. By the way, at the Strong Chess on Twitter is a delightful follow. So everyone, give him a follow. He is very fun to watch. I think that is going to do it. Todd, is there anything else you wanted to give our viewers as a going away treat?
No, I think that's about it. I encourage everybody to get into lifting. It's a great thing to do. It's a good complement to chess, and just one of maybe like of all the life hacks and like little tweaks that you read about on the internet, like it's probably the one biggest leverage change that I've made in my life as an adult. So I encourage everybody to learn how to squat and bench and go do it.
Awesome. Yes, I completely agree. My home gym is like the best money I have ever spent in my
Yeah,
entire life. All right, Todd, thank you for joining. Thank you for being patient while we tried to figure out scheduling for
yeah, yeah.
three
No
grown
worries.
men to three grown men to try to find one night to hang out.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Todd.
Yeah. All right. Thanks
Yeah,
everyone for joining, and we'll see
thank
you
you guys
next
so
week.
much.